Wow. Wow, wow. Paul Robeson, what a voice. Check him out, people, if you haven't delved into the incredible talents and the story of Paul Robeson. Thank you, Tom, for putting together some great sounds there. I think did you want to say something about this or no? Okay. Our second guest here is Karen Sheley. Karen of ACLU is going to talk to us about the new police contract and what we need to watch for. We have been working in Network 49 on this issue, and we actually met with the commander the other day, right before the 15 points came out, actually. So, and we're not at the point where we could talk to him baldly about that sort of thing, but we certainly can talk to each other about it. And what, in fact, are we looking at here? What is the work that organizers need to do to make police accountable in the state that we're now in, with a attorney general who has no interest in following up on this DOJ report?
Yeah, one of the really sad things, there's so many sad things about the Trump administration, but one of them is that, right as...
Putting it mildly,
one of them is that just as the Obama administration was leaving, they issued a report about the Chicago Police Department that reflected what a lot of people in Chicago already knew.
That's right.
Communities of color already knew because they were suffering. And part of the report highlighted the fact that the union contracts that the police have with the city are a barrier to accountability and are a barrier to any kind of discipline for officers who hurt people. And we're looking to change that. Now that we're living in a new reality where Jeff Sessions is not going to be taking this on and with the seriousness that it deserves,
requires.
We're calling on everybody in Chicago to step up, and each of us to take our part to replicate what the Department of Justice would have done if it were actually a Department of Justice. So the things that we're looking for in this new contract are to remove 13 provisions and add a 14th one. And these provisions are things that basically encapsulate and create the code of silence within the police department. It makes it official policy in Chicago to have a code of silence. When you have things in a contract like a rule that officers don't have to speak to investigators for 24 hours after a shooting. We all saw what happened with the Laquan McDonald investigation because of that. And there are a number of other provisions that are similarly bad.
The last time the ACLU succeeded in impacting police practice, it changed the way, I forget the technical term, the way stop and frisk orders got written up.
Yes.
And the result is that police claim that they're not doing it as much because there's too much paperwork. How do you overcome what seems to me to be a pretty reasonable set of recommendations at a new contract time, so how appropriate, with this kind of flavor of, well, it's the ACLU and we can't go along with what they're saying, is they're going to let everybody out in the street?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that with the stop and frisk agreement, we had a crisis in Chicago in terms of the number of stops. There were 1.3 million stops in 2014 and 2015. People who lived on the north side didn't see it or feel it. It was an impact on black Chicagoans living on the south and the west sides. People were being stopped for unjustifiable reasons. We were getting complaints from school kids on the way home, from city workers, from kids who had family in law enforcement, who were good kids, who were not engaged in any criminal activity. They were being stopped and having hands put on them by the police department. So we see the drop in stops as a necessary thing to happen once we start holding police accountable for the interactions they're having with people. So we weren't surprised there was a drop. Shifting to talk about, what do we say about the union contracts? Well, it's not just us. We're working in coalition with community groups all across the city, with other civil rights organizations who are focused on this. And it wasn't just us that say that these things need to change. The Department of Justice said it under Obama, and the mayor's own task force on police accountability identified these issues within the union contract as serious problems and serious barriers in order to have true accountability.
So given the newly elected leadership of the police union, how much more difficult, or is it just going to be as difficult to, as it was ever, to break through that? It is such a solid blue line and wall of communication between police and civilians in Chicago. It's hard to know where to start.
Well, the place I think we need to start is with the aldermen. The aldermen vote on the union contract, and if they vote no, it goes to arbitration. If it goes to arbitration, what we need from the city is to put forward the best, most aggressive case they can before the arbitrator to remove these provisions. Unlike other unions, police officers can't strike. So if they were in a situation where they would want to strike, instead of having a strike, you have an arbitration process. And that is where we've lost out on a lot of these provisions in the past. Partly, I believe, because there weren't strong enough arguments made to the arbitrator. If we make if we yell and scream and demand from our aldermen to make a record and demand that they hold the city accountable in making a record, then I think that we can make this change. The time's right. If we don't get it this year, in 5 years, do we really think we're going to get it? We have a DOJ report. We have the mayor's task force report. We have communities that have been calling for these changes for decades. And I really think the time is now.
Is the newly released force orders an indication that there's leadership that's open to changing the code of silence in the
That's
South?
a good question.
Yeah, I think that the use of force policy has some...
I mean, community activists said, we got a lot of what we were looking for in these new rules. I don't know enough about the old regs to know if the new ones are that much of an improvement, but certainly what we saw in the video should not be considered good police practice.
Right.
And if they've changed those regs, God bless them, but...
Well, the proof is going to show itself.
Yeah.
We'll know when we see how they operate and how it works in the street. I think that the use of force rules that deal with deadly force have definitely improved. There are still issues around the use of tasers and less than deadly force that we're concerned about. And they still haven't revised the reporting policies. So like who do you tell when there's a police shooting? Who gets informed? And right now, all the people who get informed are within the police department. They're not yet required to inform the Independent Police Review Authority. And I think that that's a change we need to be watching for over the next few months, because it was a change that they asked for. They're the body that investigates police misconduct. They're the body that investigates the police shootings. If they're not the first person that's contacted, that's really worrisome.
Who are the aldermen who are most open to carrying water for this cause?
The Black Caucus is already signed on.
Okay.
So now we need to start looking to the rest of the city and start talking to aldermen around the city on that.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get involved with this kind of work?
I have been at the ACLU since 2008, and it's a core part of our mission. I've cared about justice and police and justice within the interaction between the government and all its forms and people for a lot of years. And I think that really the pavement hits the ground with interactions between the police and communities.
Yeah.
Karen Sheley, when we were making up the promotion for the show, I note that you are at the ACLU and you are involved with the Illinois Police Practices Project.
Yes.
So where does that take you beyond the contract of the Chicago, in Chicago? What else in Illinois are you looking at?
We are looking at pedestrian stops and traffic stops throughout Illinois. I think we'll be publishing a report in the next couple of months on that. We've done it historically. And we work in Springfield with partners to ensure that good practices are set up around the state. So for example, in 2015, we worked on a law that now requires better training for officers. There weren't requirements before for annual training, now there are. And also data collection around use of force. So I think that those things have impacts all around the state, and we also talk to folks who are organizing in their own communities to give technical support if they need it.
I think it's important to note that, and many of our listeners may understand this, that it depends where you live in the city and what race you are about how things come down. Because at a meeting the other night, we were talking about the police in the 49th Ward, and they, in many ways, some of them are really positive. But someone pointed out that there is a difference between certain parts of the ward, which are, overwhelmingly African American, and the rest of the ward, and how things are come down.
Yeah.
So I'm just throwing that out, that many people listening think, well, the police aren't so bad, but there's a real distinction between the way the police behave depending on the neighborhood.
We are so segregated in Chicago that we really live in 3 cities. And we have to trust and listen to the people who are our neighbors, living in the other cities, and trust them when they're saying that they're suffering. And our clients that we talk to on a regular basis, and people that are working with us in these community groups, have identified an area of suffering, and this union contract is one of the pieces that supports it.
Karen, Sheley, in this work, you are really helping the community. I want to assure you of that. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I also would like to just comment on, in this period since the most recent inauguration, ACLU has experienced membership growth, perhaps?
Yes, and that's
Deservedly so.
and that's partly why we're now shifting to work more on trying to organize people to take action.
Excellent.
So today we're hosting trainings for people who want to engage with their aldermen and with their legislators.
Where? When?
They're at our office today. I think we're full for the day, but we're planning more. So if you go onto our website and sign up as a volunteer, or if you sign up for our new program called People Power, which is trying to capture a lot of the spirit of people who are willing to leave their house, that you can sign up for our action alert and email your legislator or the governor. If you want to leave your house and go to a rally or go to have a meeting with an alderman or a legislator, People Power is the way that we're organizing folks.
Sweet.
And you can sign up for that on our website as well.
Excellent.
I think the key message here, not to put a too fine point on it, is without the Department of Justice enforcing a consent decree or other means, it's really up to the citizens of Chicago to take the original DOJ report and make sure it happens.
Yes, we have to be the Department of Justice.
You've given us a key, which is going after all of them.
Thank you
Maybe
so
another march.
Thank you so much for the materials you brought, the Coalition for Police Contracts Accountability, which we will use in our organizing as well, and the recommendations. Really useful to have this language and again, to have your work. You're going to come back sometime, right?
I'd be happy to.
Keep
I'm
us
really
posted.
glad to be here today. Thank you so much for making the time for me to be on the show.
And don't leave before we take the group photo.
That's right. That's right. We got to put you on
Wouldn't miss
Facebook. You are listening to Live from the Heartland,
Thank you.
WLUW 88.7 FM on your dial, and WLUW.org, where we stream live. And we got some music coming up, something great that you brought us. Oh, the music from Brian Quijada's upcoming, the show, Where Did We Sit on the Bus? He's our upcoming guest.